certainly has a lot of friends in tech who are in crypto. So I'm sure he's been looking at this space. Remember, he started back in PayPal, so he's been thinking about money in the internet for decades, longer than me. So I think that's how it starts. But he's such a bellwether, right? That if you are a CEO of another company, you have to be looking in that, asking yourself, what does he know? What do I know that he doesn't know where I'm not buying Bitcoin? Oh, and then you look at what's happening to the dollar, the Fed, the debt burdens, the money spending, the money printing that's been happening before the pandemic for the last decade. And then what's been happening to get us through that. So you see what's happening over here. You see Elon Musk doing this, Jack Dorsey making these moves over there. It starts to become completely irresponsible not to at least have a story. Like maybe your positions were not ready, but you have to have thought about it. I think if you have cash on your balance sheet, if you're a CEO, and I actually think that this I can't remember if it was last year or this year, but the corporate treasury putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet started, right? At some point, those dominoes will continue to fall. And like Cameron said, Fortune 500 companies, all of them will have something, right? And then at some point, a central bank will fall. Central banks, their muscle memory has been to stack gold. Even when they say everything's happening, everything's fine, this is normal, all this money printing, no big deal. Nothing to see here. Don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. And their balance sheets, they've been stacking gold. Okay, so that behavior, doesn't indicate that everything's okay to me, right? Because they're getting this hard money. And then they'll discover that the hardest money in the galaxy is Bitcoin. So at some point, there will be a central bank that starts putting Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So when you think of, and then it's just bananas, right? And when you think of how early we are in the corporate treasuries doing this, and then the fact that central banks will do this because this behavior, they do it with gold. And if you do it with gold, you are going to do it. It's not an if, it's a when with Bitcoin. And that's just like the Bitcoin, gold 2.0 story. So I see a path to 10 trillion very easily. But as we know, Bitcoin's a lot more than just a metal, an open source project, gold built for the internet. It can do so much more. So, we published that thought piece of the case for 500,000 Bitcoin, but it's conservative. It could be a lot more.
Well, the article made the front page of the Daily Mail website. I'm not sure if you know that.
That's cool. And look, I think there's also even some intermediate steps, right? There's pension funds, and then there's sovereign wealth funds, which are sort of a proxy. The state would be like the LP of that, or the central bank. I'm sure they all have slightly different structures, but there are some really innovative and brilliant sovereign wealth funds out there. Singapore, Temasek, and all that stuff. These guys and gals are all long, they're long tech. They understand that. They're out on the curve, on the frontier. So it's just really a matter of time. But it's going to be sort of one of those mad dashes, as Tyler mentioned. I mean, I every once in a while I remind people on Twitter that there's only 21 million Bitcoin. And there's 46 million millionaires on the planet right now. There's not a full Bitcoin to go around. You don't want to be the millionaire who's not in that 21 million bucket. Right. Then you're no longer going to be a millionaire, right? And it's like being at a party, the music stops. You got to find that seat, and buying Bitcoin is like buying a pro rata seat on this network of money, the store of value network. And really time is of the essence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other thing is you're starting to see a lot of these big banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Boney get into Bitcoin. That's all driven by their customers. Their private wealth customers are seeing what's happening with the price of Bitcoin. They're like, how do I get exposure? They're like, we don't know. We don't know how to do it.
All the announcements coming out are that these banks are allowing their wealthy clients to buy Bitcoin. It's not. That's the announcement.
they're freaking out because the wealthy clients are seeing they're seeing the price of Bitcoin, the best performing asset of the last decade. It's going to be the best this decade, and they can't touch it, right? So how are these private wealth managers doing their job if they literally can't get their clients Bitcoin? So that's driving it. That's what drives all these banks. Is ultimately it's the business case and the demand from their customers. And so, yeah, as the price keeps going up, like everybody's like, what are we doing here? The risk is sitting on the sidelines. The risk is doing nothing. I think that's the ultimate, like that's the people are like, oh, how do you get comfortable with Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin? Like, how do you get comfortable not holding Bitcoin? Like, that's so much more risky. I would never take that bet over the last decade or the next decade or the one thereafter. So like, and that the way I think about it, the way you think about it, Peter, the way Cameron thinks about it, that's rapidly becoming the way everyone thinks about it. They're like, wait, I don't have chips on the table. That's kind of reckless and insane.
I was just going to say, it's a bit like your friend Jelly Hands, Mr. Dave Portnoy, who sold all his Bitcoin after you recommended it to him. And now he was saying yesterday...
Paper hands.
I call him Jelly Hands. He's like, what's my entry price? I'm waiting for another entry price. And it's like, what? Are you going to wait for it to go to 100K and drop down to 80? Like, what are you buying this to hold for a few weeks and sell it? Or like, are you buying this for a decade?
I think DTGG or, Davey Day Trader Global likes to go in and out, right? But this is a patience play. You have to go long. And
why do you still think Wall Street doesn't fully get this themselves? Like, I was talking to Preston Pish about this, and almost feels like the company treasury has leapfrogged Wall Street as the kind of like group of people in this bull run that has really been pushing the adoption of Bitcoin. What's happening like with the Wall Street guys?
So it's an interesting question, and I think like it's no secret that the best trade over the past decade was really big tech, and it still is a great trade. But tech used to be sort of like this sector allocation. Hey, we're going to do a little tech here. We're going to do a little financial service, industrials, yada, yada. But really you wanted to be heavily concentrated in a few symbols. But it's sort of obvious. And I think Peter Thiel described it as like too stupid to advise. So how do you sort of earn your keep as an advisor if you're literally telling people like, buy that company that makes that product that you literally spend 10 hours a day on looking at, right? The black mirror of the iPhone. Like that's some pretty straightforward, stupid, I'm putting that in air quotes, advice, right? And you're supposed to be the wizard who gives people sort of this inside baseball or this complex strategy, but it's really simple. Bitcoin's a simple idea when you boil it down. It's go long the future of store of value money, the future, reserve currency. Yes, you're gonna literally hodl it for years. Don't look at it, and you're gonna ask someone to collect a fee on that advice. It's kind of a hard sell, and so I think a lot of the resistance sometimes is this baked in belief of diversification and portfolio construction, and people making those straightforward, simple bets on the future sometimes become elusive in those environments.